So we call this the product rule. So I'm going to show you a couple things about the product rule, show you how the rule works, and then in class we'll do some application of the product rule. So let me show you my screen and present to you just a beginning start to our notes. And this is called the product rule. Okay, so we're going to take a look at what's called the product rule. So first of all, what is the product rule? And we're going to also talk about how does it work. So if you take a look at this problem, we have f of x equals 3x cubed plus 4x, all the quantity of that, times the quantity of 2x to the fourth minus 5x. Okay, now with this sort of rule, you cannot use the power rule, just taking the power rule of each of the pieces, because they are being multiplied together. So if you notice, we have this quantity times this quantity. So I'm going to show you, first of all, how to do this without using the power rule, and then without using the product rule. And then I'm going to show you how the product rule actually works with this. Now we'll take a look at one more example. So you could take this, so we could do 3x cubed plus 4x, and we could take 2x to the fourth minus 5x, and we could FOIL this out. Okay, so we could use FOIL. So we'll do the first, so that'll give us 6x to the seventh. Then we'll do the outers, that'll give us negative 15x to the fourth. Then we'll do the inners, 4 times 2 is 8, so it'll be plus 8x to the fifth. And then we'll do the outers here, which is negative 20x squared. Okay? So we could go through and we could multiply all of those up. Now we could use the power rule. Okay? So the power with a constant. So you multiply this times this, so we get 42x, and then you need to subtract 1 from there. So it'd be 42x to the sixth. Do the same thing here. Negative 15 times 4 is negative 60x, subtract 1 from the power. Then we could go here. This will be plus 40x to the fourth. And then we use the power rule again, minus 40x to the first, because we subtract 1 from it. This now is the derivative of f of x. Okay? Well, we have another thing that we can use when things are being multiplied. Now, you can always go back and you can use this method to solve this problem. But I'm going to show you another way to solve this problem, and this way is called the product rule. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to actually just tell you in kind of a nutshell what the product rule is. So we're going to take the same equation. Okay? So we're going to start with 3x cubed plus 4x. And then we're going to go with 2x to the fourth minus 5x. So here's what you do when you're taking a look or you're working with something like this. If you're going to use the product rule, we're going to basically call this the first. Okay? It is the first quantity that we are going to work with. So it's the first quantity. And then this is the second quantity. So what the product rule says is this. We're going to take the first and multiply it times the derivative of the second. Then we're going to add to it the second times the derivative of the first. Okay? So the product rule basically says take the first one, whatever it is, don't change it, multiply it times the derivative of the second, and then take the second one and multiply it times the derivative of the first. Now for this problem, you're going to notice that it probably is easier just to FOIL it out and use the power rule. But to show you the definition, this is a good problem to start with. So let's take the first. The first is 3x cubed plus 4x. Now, multiply it times the derivative of the second. So you have to use the power rule to find the derivative of this. So you're going to take the 4 and multiply it times the 2. So it's going to be 8x. And then we need to subtract 1. Minus, we have 5x. So using the power rule, it's 1 times negative 5. So it'll be negative 5. But again, it's going to be x to the 0. So we're not going to change it. Okay, so let's go to the next part. Now we're going to add the second. So we have to take the second one, which is 2x to the fourth minus 5x. Don't do anything with it, okay? Just take the whole second quantity times the derivative of the first. So use the power rule. 3 times 3 is 9. And then you have to subtract 1, so it'll be 9x squared. And then if you look right here, we have 4x, so this is to the first power. So it'll be plus 4, x to the 0 is 1. Okay? Or x to the 0, yes, is 1. So now, we have to go through and multiply all this out. But what I want to show you, though, is that we're going to end up with the same answer as we get up here. So 3x times 8x is 24. X to the 6th, and then 3x cubed minus 5x will be minus 5x cubed. So we're just FOILing this out. 4x times 8x cubed is plus 32 x to the 4th, and 4x times negative 5 is negative 20x. So that's multiplying out the first part. Now we need to multiply out the second part. So 2x to the 4th times 9x squared is going to be 18 x to the 6th. 2x to the 4th times 4 is going to be plus 8x to the 4th. Then we have negative 5x times negative 9, or negative 5x times 9x to the squared is going to be negative 45x cubed. And then we're going to have minus 20x. Okay? So we now multiply all those out. Now the last thing you just do is you go through and combine like terms. So we have 24x to the 6th and 18x to the 6th. So that gives us 42x to the 6th. We have x to the 3rd. And we have minus 45, and oops, I dropped a 1. That should be minus 15, minus 45, so that would be minus 60 x cubed. Okay. Then we have our x to the 4th, so that would be plus 40 x to the 4th. And then we have minus 20x, and minus 20x is going to be minus 40x. So notice that the derivative of this is the same as the derivative when we multiplied it out. This is how the product rule works. You need to know that it's the first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you one more problem that involves using this. And then we will be done with what the product rule is, because the product rule is fairly straightforward. So let's say I give you this quantity. So this will be, let's see, what part was this? This will be letter C. And we're going to do f of x equals, we have the two quantities. We're going to do 3 plus 2x, 2 times the square root of x. And then we have 5x cubed minus 7. Okay? So we are going to use the product rule to work with this. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing that you always should focus on is if you see square roots, always change them to their exponent form. So we're going to change 3 plus 2. This is going to be x to the 1/2 power. Because remember, it's the first power, but it's the square root. So the first power, the square root, is on the bottom of the fraction. And then we're going to do 5x to the 3rd minus 7. Okay, so now let's use the product rule to figure out this answer. Okay, so it's going to be the first. So we're going to start with 3 plus 2 times x to the 1/2 times the derivative of the second. So the derivative of the second, we have to use the power rule. So it's going to be 3 and 5, so that's going to be 15x squared. And then minus 7. Well, it's a constant. Remember, anytime you take the derivative of a constant, it's 0. So that's the first thing you do. So it's first times the derivative of the second. Now, we have to do the second times the derivative of the first. So we're going to do 3 plus 2x to the 1/2. Oh, I just messed that up. Let's try this again. Because I said the second times the derivative of the first. So let's go 5x cubed minus 7. Now we need to take the derivative of this function. Okay, this part, the first part. So the derivative of 3 is, of course, 0. Okay, because it's a constant. And now we have to take 1/2 times 2, which is going to give us 1. X to the, if you subtract 1 from there, that's going to be negative 1/2. So there's our second quantity. Now, don't deal with the negative 1/2 until we get to the very end. Okay, then work with your negative numbers and your negative exponents and move them around. So now let's do all the multiplication. So we need to take 15x squared and multiply it times 3. So that's going to give us 45x squared. We also need to take 15x squared and multiply it times 2x to the 1/2. So when we do that, we're going to get plus 30. And remember, when you multiply exponents, you add them up. So that's going to be x to the 2/2, or 2.5. So I'm going to put that as 5/2. Okay, because 2 plus 1/2 is 2.5. So I'm going to make that into just a single fraction. Now, let's go ahead and multiply these out. So we're going to have 5x times 1x to the negative 1/2. So 5 plus, let's use a different color for this. So let's use green, plus 5. X to the 3rd times x to the negative 1/2. Add the exponents. So x to the 3rd minus 1/2 is 2.5 again. So it's going to be x to the 5/2 minus 7 x to the negative 1/2. Okay, so this is the first times the derivative of the second multiplied out. This is the second times the derivative of the first multiplied out. Now, combine all your like terms. Well, we have 45x squared. We have 30 and 5. Both of them are x to the 5/2. So it's going to be plus 35 x to the 5/2 minus 7 x to the negative 1/2. So this is now our derivative of that function. But you should go through and you should change your square, your 5/2 and things like that to its actual square root form. So we're going to have 45x squared plus 35. Now remember, the top number is the power, the bottom number is the root. So this is going to be the square root of x to the 5th minus, remember, a negative 1/2 moves it to the bottom. So we're going to have 7 over x to the 1/2. But we should put it as a square root. So it's going to be minus 7 over the square root of x to the 1st power. So this will be our final derivative using the power rule.